I'm standing on the shore of the sea, and the tide is going out. A few years ago, the tide was coming in. A few years ago, here in Glasgow at COP26, governments made all sorts of promises, took on all sorts of commitments, and set targets in order to deal with the climate emergency that we face. But since then, the tide has been going out as governments have pulled back on those promises, have gone soft on their commitments, and have ignored targets that they set. It seems to be a weakness of Western democracy. There's a certain short-termism in what governments do. They don't seem able to take on a long-term commitment and to dedicate ourselves to a task that will take a long time to achieve and will, of course, mean making many hard decisions along the way. Individuals, and many individuals do try and do what they can, but the problems of climate change are so vast they can only be solved by governments worldwide coming together and working together for a solution. For instance, many people are very keen to cut back on the use of plastic bags. But worldwide, the amount of plastic being produced every year keeps increasing. And there's been conferences and international conferences among governments to try and put a cap on the production of plastic, but they've all failed. There's no cap, and there's certainly no reduction in plastic use. It does need governments to come together and not to act out of some narrow interest, which they call national sovereignty. In the first reading we heard today from the book of Genesis, the story of the creation, we're told how God entrusts creation into the hands of humanity. Humanity is asked to have dominion over creation. That's not to abuse it. That's to govern it. That's to have stewardship of something that we have not created, but is a gift that has been given to us and has been given to all of us to use for all of us. We are the ones who have taken God's gift of creation, and we are the ones who have divided it up into territories and countries. We put up boundaries and barriers and borders, and we say, this is mine, this is ours. I can do what I want with all the resources contained in this part of the earth. Whereas they fail to recognize that the earth is given to us by God as our common home for the good of all who live here. And I cannot just claim one part exclusively for myself. When I became a bishop about 10 years ago, I was told that while I had to have a concern for my diocese, I also had to have a concern for the well-being of the whole church worldwide. And the same, I think, is true of every political leader. Yes, you have to have a concern for your own constituency, for your own country, but you also have to have a concern for the common good of all of humanity worldwide. That's particularly true of national leaders. So today we are praying for all those gathered in Brazil for COP30. COP30 means that there have been 30 years of governments coming together to discuss and debate the climate crisis. And in that time, the tide has come in and gone out, as governments have seesawed between making promises and then pulling back on those promises. We're here today to pray for them, to pray for the world leaders who are in Brazil, pray for those world leaders that haven't got to Brazil, that they will recognize their responsibility. We pray that the tide will turn, that they will make promises and keep promises. We pray that they'll recognize their need to be concerned for the common good of all and for the good of our common home.